Okay, if everybody's ready, I think we can start this debate. So without further ado, I would like to give the floor to the first speaker of the conversation. Here.
Okay, everybody's ready? Yes. It is obvious that the necessary cost for the transition to a circular economy must be fully borne by companies without being passed on to the consumer. This is what the side proposition is going to sustain today, that the cost of the circular economy transaction must be borne by economies, for a simple reason. Economies are actually rich, and they haven't been enriched by the economy itself, and have the money to borne this transaction, while the consumers don't actually have this kind of money and could not easily provide for this change. Thus, there is no easy method nor efficient method for which the consumers could actually change the economy for the circular economy transaction. Before going on, I would like to define what circular economy is. So, as said by the motion, it is an economic system based on the reuse and generation of material or products, especially as a means of continuing production in a sustainable or environmental friendly way. So, what actually happens in this economy system that is a circular economy? We try to limit to the least the waste that is being produced by economies. So this would actually be very beneficial for our environment. In fact, the main objective of the economic circular economy are the R's, that are rebuild, reduce, reuse, recycle, and return. And the main objective that this economy is trying to reach is environmental safety and fight against, fight against the climate change and more efficient market which answers to the company's need. Tell me, yeah, presentation.
You have said at the beginning that it should be fully paid by the companies, the economy, because they have the money to make this transition. Are you considering even small economies?
Considering that the companies have the actual possibility to pay for the transaction because they are the one who are going to profit from the transaction itself. And this is what I'm going to explain in my arguments as well. So, as I was saying, my team will bring to you three main arguments. The first is, it is more just to make the companies pay for the transaction because they are the ones who would profit from this change. The second one is, it is more just to make the economies pay for this transaction because the companies are the main polluters. And the third one is that we would develop in this way a reciprocal trust between the consumers and the company itself. Personally, I'm going to speak about the first two arguments, while my second speaker is going to speak about the third one. So, going back to the first argument, it is more just to make the companies pay for the transaction because they are the ones who are going to profit from this change. So, this change would actually consist in switching to greener technologies. Greener technologies would be implemented to actually benefit the environment itself. And they have an actual benefit because they would reduce vastly and drastically the waste that is being produced by these companies. Waste is a real problem for companies because they have to transport it, they have to get rid of it, and this is causing them to lose some money. So if they could actually get rid of the waste with the economic transaction to a circular economy, they would actually be benefiting and profiting. Plus, they would also be able to reuse this waste that is being produced. That would be much and considerably less to actually maximize the production or their manufacture. So if they maximize their productions and they reduce the costs that they have to support to get rid of the waste and to manage the waste itself, it is clear that the economies will be able to get much more profit. They will have major dispensable money that they can use to pay for this circular transaction. So it would not be just to make the consumers pay for the transaction, even though they are not the one that are benefiting from it, or their economies are the ones that are actually making money because of the transaction itself. So it is in the best interest of the economies to make this transaction, and it is just for this economy to pay for the transaction, because as I just said, they would be in a situation in which their profits would be maximized. It is also just for the companies to pay for this transaction from a more moral point of view, we could say. This, in fact, goes to my second argument. So companies are the main polluters, and they need to pay for the waste that they, for the environmental crisis that they produce. So, in a second, nowadays, we know that seven major companies create the 80% of CO2 emission. So it is morally unjust to expect the consumers to pay to actually have a change that would just be made to take a turn to make better situation that the companies created that by themselves. Before going on, I'm taking the point of information.
But are you aware that climate change is an issue that involves everybody, also consumers or citizens, not only companies?
The climate change is something that involves everybody, but it's something that is being caused by companies. In fact, as I said, companies are the ones that are polluting. So companies should be the ones to pay. In fact, as I'm going to explain to you, the consumers do not actually have a choice when seeing what they are buying, because the companies are creating products that are made to actually produce waste and to actually produce pollution. So when a citizen is buying something, they are buying something that it cannot be used, that cannot be most of the times recycled. This is not the producer. This is the producer's fault, not the consumer's fault. So it should be the producer who should be paying to solve the problem that they create. In fact, as I already said, the consumers do not have the possibility to actually decide to not pollute, because the companies are the ones that are creating materials that to be used to create pollution themselves. It is so very in need that the companies start creating things that could actually fix the crisis that they created by themselves. Plus, the companies pollute also by the way that they are producing these goods and these materials. In fact, the production cycles that the company use involve a great emission of CO2, a great polluting component, and so on. So, since the companies are the ones that brought us to this point and to this environmental crisis, they should be the ones who pay for it. And so, it is for this exact reason that this house thinks that the economies and the companies should pay for a circular economy transaction.
Thank you for your speech. That speech lasted for 8 minutes and 8 seconds. I would now like to give the floor to the first speaker of opposition, Kyrie.
I will start my speech in 3, 2, 1, and go. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Today we are going to discuss the following motion, which is the necessary laws for the transition, the necessary costs for the transition to a circular economy must be flowing both by the companies without being passed on the consumers. So, first of all, I would like to add a definition in which opinion is so important to give because it will help us to better understand this motion and also our position. So the definition that I want to give is the definition of the adjective fully. Fully means that completely, no less or lower than, or lower than. So now I would like to go on with the repetition of what has been said so far about the first speaker of the other teams. So she started her speech by saying that the companies have the money, have the fund to pay, while consumers can't afford this cost. And we don't believe that, because we think that if we are going to tax, for example, a product, every citizen, so every consumer, every person that buy that product could afford this cost, because we are talking about small increase of prices. Like, for example, my colleague was said about the model of the IVA that already exists in Italy. And then I'm going on with the repetition. Yes.
So do you not realize that by companies investing in this transaction, when the consumers are actually to purchase the circular economy goods, they would actually be bringing this profit back to the companies themselves?
So thanks for your POI. That's true that some profit will go back to the companies, but the companies have the role to invest this money to face climate change, to face pollution, which is the problem that we are going to face in this period. So I hope I've been able to answer your question. Then I'm going on with the repetition. She said that only, and I will underline the word only, the company will benefit for the transition. But that's not true, because we are living all in the same world. And we all are living in the same world, also consumers or citizens. So that's not true that only the company will benefit from this transition. And then they didn't say why the profit could be maximized with this transition. Then she said also that the companies are not the ones that produce pollution, that pollute. But we think that also private produce pollution with waste and packaging and so on. And also she said that consumers can have a choice to avoid to make pollution, but that's not true, because every consumer, every citizen has the choice to choose what he prefers, in the way that we are going to reduce also the reduction of pollution. Now I would like to go on with my speech and give some context, because it's so important to understand. So we live in a world where climate change is one of the most important issues that we have to face at the moment, and we have to act now, immediately, because time is, the clock is ticking, and the time is running. There are so many causes of the global warming, and one of these is, of course, as we all are aware, climate change. Our pollution, I'm sorry. Pollution is caused by us. For example, one of the most important causes of the climate change, the pollution, is wasting. In addition, of course, to the emission of carbon dioxide and so on. Who is responsible for this are two and who is responsible for this? There are two most important stakeholders that are the companies and also the consumers. The principle that we want to defend is the sensibilization and the responsibility that we are going to give the consumers of not only to the companies by making paying also consumers with on the transition. Our team line is the following that I'm going to present to you. First of all, the first speaker, which is me, will explain you how by introducing this motion, we are going to make consumers more sensibilized on the problem, on the issue. And then the second speaker will talk about the fact that we are all responsible for the world we are living now. And that's why we must be responsible. So we should pay for this because we all benefit from the product that we buy. And this is going to explain by her in her counter model. And the client, sorry. And then the third speaker will refuse what has been said during this debate, trying to sum up this debate and also give another example. Now I would like to do my argument. So I will explain to you how by making consumer pay, it will become the consumer will become more sensibilized on the issue of the climate change that we have to face. So this is possible thanks to the power of the money. Money are one of the most important things in the world for a person, for a man. In fact, the consumer has to pay. In this way, he's going to invest in a project that regards all of us, which is the problem. Take to you before, which is climate change. So, I would like to bring you a small example. Think, for example, about Legambiente, which is an association which provides to fight against climate change and environmental issues. If a person gives some money to the association, he will lose his own money to give them to an association that will work to the good of all the world, of all the citizens, not only for the good of companies, not only for the good of a small part of people, for all the companies. So with my speech, I hope I've been able to demonstrate to you why consumers have to pay for this transition. So that's it. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you for your speech. Next speech lasted 7 minutes and 55 seconds. I will now give the floor to the second speaker for side proposition. Here.
Dear judges, as second speaker of the proposition team, it is now my duty to explain to you why the model that was presented by the opposition team is simply something that is not efficient and it actually has no logical or moral background, which instead we as the proposition team are providing. Now, firstly, I would like to remind what we have discussed regarding circular economy. Now, the entire objective of circular economy itself is to bring to greener investments and to cleaner technologies because of the climate change crisis that the opposition team has also spoken about that we are confronting in our modern-day society. Obviously, we understand that this is a very pressuring issue. And the problem is that there is no more time to act. Specifically for this reason, what we believe is that it is extremely important to hold liable the companies which are the main source of pollution. In fact, something that we have to take into consideration, as the first speaker of my team has already stated, is that 80% of companies in the world who tend to pollute, no thank you, way more than individual citizens. What this means is that bigger companies are the ones who are actually supposed to be held responsible, not only for a logical process, which is that they are the ones who pollute, but also from a moral point of view. I mean, how can we actually expect for a consumer to take the burden of paying for something that was not even caused by them? In fact, I would like to remind how we have stated the fact that there is a maximization of production from a long-term point of view when these companies invest in these greener technologies and in these cleaner prime materials. Now, what this means is that consumers would actually benefit from this. So we have actually, in order to respond to the opposition team, we never actually stated that companies are the only ones who would benefit from the cost of this transaction, because we do understand that, however, there is a burden taking place. But we have explained through our arguments how it is consequential in the market that when the companies take this burden of covering this cost, there will be a positive feedback on behalf of the consumers. In fact, something that we have to take into consideration is that it is not a consumer problem to have the burden of a responsibility which they did not cause. Let us explain deeper. Now, circular economy obviously focuses, as we have already stated, on the R's of the green reuse, reusage, recycling, return, etc. So what this means essentially is that when a consumer purchases a certain good, it will usually be a good which is not only produced with cleaner technologies, thus producing less emissions, but it will also last longer. Therefore, the consumer will not have to pay less for a cheaper product that will eventually end up breaking and also probably losing trust in the company itself. They will invest in products and goods which are actually beneficial to them as well. And something that we have to consider is that a consumer could not possibly face the responsibility of paying for this necessary transaction amount in order to access circular economy because they are not the ones who choose to purchase products which were produced following the linear economy system. If a company puts out a certain product, the consumer has a choice, of course, within what companies to buy from, but they cannot actually dictate over the company what type of systems to use to produce them. It is obviously the companies who have the main jurisdiction in these matters. Additionally, I would like to answer to one of the POIs that was asked to the first speaker of our team, which is that smaller companies actually do not have the funds in order to take care of this cost, and therefore it would be extremely negative on their account. But firstly, we would like to respond in two subpoints. Initially, we have to think about the fact that most consumers as well do not have the economic availability in order to take care of this transaction, which is obviously not a small cost. Whereas a company which is funded on gaining profits has that type of an economic availability. But additionally, smaller companies have an economy which is subsequent to that of the bigger companies. So when we are speaking about the companies who would actually be paying the most for this transaction, we are focusing on the bigger companies, because the economy that we are considering is not necessarily an economy where every single developing country or developed country follows the same rules, because the markets in every single country are clearly different. However, we understand that we need to start somewhere, because otherwise we will reach a moment in this climate change crisis that we are facing that is a point of no return. So another thing is that when companies invest in this transaction, they are getting their money's worth back, because consumers will gain more trust in them, and they are the ones who would actually be benefiting as well. So having stated these rebuttals, I would like to go into our third argument. Our third argument is based on the fact that there will be reciprocal trust created between company and buyers. In fact, something that we have to take into consideration is the fact that, as I have stated before, there is inevitably a market that will be created when circular economy is introduced. This market is obviously a market for the better, and I am sure that the opposition team wants this as well. However, we understand that we do not agree on the methods that are going to be used in order to achieve this market. Since the climate change issue is so extremely important, there is a time factor matter that we simply cannot let go of. This is because if we were to have to wait for consumers to actually even have the funds in order to permit for themselves to purchase this transaction need, then we would be wasting an amount of time which we simply cannot allow ourselves to do. What would this actually cause, dear judges, in the consumer's mindset? This would cause uprisings, political revolts. We already see how this economy, the linear economy that has stayed with us for decades by now, is actually something that already causes for people to cause a need for political change, public manifestations, and in general, they are not happy with these companies. Now, in the best interest of the companies as well, they would want to obtain a public image which is quintessentially important. Now, what this means is that by gaining a positive public image, the companies would actually be the ones sensibilizing the consumers because they are the ones, as we said, at the top of the market. Therefore, this would create a chain reaction in which not only do we actually reach the climate change adjustments that we so desperately need, but additionally, we are achieving the contrary of alienation of an individual from society. And in general, in this case, we focus on the consumers being alienated from the companies and feeling as though the economy in the modern society does not actually respect their needs. Now, with the circular economy model that we have presented to you, it is obvious that there is no other way to think of a more efficient process because the companies are the ones who should be held responsible since they are, as we have said, the main polluters, and they will create a reciprocal trust situation within individual and company relationships. At the end of the day, what we really have to ask ourselves is if we have time to wait around or to actually expect the consumer to want to comply with paying such an amount, or if we want to choose the side of side proposition, which actually proposes an effective and time-efficient model. And for this reason, I am so proud to propose.
Thank you for your speech. That speech lasted 8 minutes and 5 seconds. I would now like to leave the floor to the second speaker for the side opposition. Here.
Yes. Okay, so I will start my speech in 3, 2, 1, and go. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I'm the second speaker of the proposition team, and I will start with my refutation of what has been said so far by the other team. So, it was stated that our model is ineffective, and I would like to point out that our first speaker has yet to present our model, because presenting the model, it would be my role, which I will do later on. You also mentioned that individuals do not pollute. Well, that is absolutely wrong. Waste and packaging, privates most certainly do pollute. And there was a very big contradiction about who benefits from a transition to a circular economy. Because the first speaker stated that only companies would benefit, while the second speaker contradicted her colleague by saying that not only companies would benefit from the transition. And lastly, I would like to point out that our plan is not to exempt companies from paying for the transition. What we want is that they shouldn't fully bear the cost, but part of the cost should instead be shared with the consumers. And my second argument, in fact, explains why we believe that to be extremely important. But before going on with my second argument, I will now present our model, because we are aware that it can probably be considered difficult to have the consumers share a part of the cost. And for this, we will now present a model. Obviously, we do not want consumers to pay directly, but instead, we plan on having them contribute through a raise in prices of the products. And we believe this model to be effective because it has an already existing parallel, which would be IVA. What is IVA? Well, IVA is a small percentage that is taken off of the profit of a company and is given to the state. So the principle behind our own model is the same.
You can present model in the second speech because we have less time to repeat.
Thank you for your question, but that is not true. We can present the model in the first or second speech. Thank you. So, as I was saying, our plan is to introduce a percentage of money that will be used for the transition to the circular economy. Having said that, I will now go on with our second argument, which, as previously stated, is why we believe that it is very important for the consumers to share, to bear a part of the cost. Sorry. So the key term that would summarize our position is responsibility. We want citizens that are not passive actors in the matter of climate change. POI declined. We want citizens that, as I said, are also aware of the dangers of, that pollution poses and contribute to get rid of a problem that concerns them directly and importantly. To further demonstrate that it is necessary to have the consumer's contribution, I would like to bring an example. So, think of the public health system. Health is a matter that concerns all citizens. It is, yes.
So if you would like to raise prices for the consumers, don't you believe this would bring to political uprisings and thus it would not actually solve the problem?
Thank you for your question. We are not talking about an exaggerating raise in prices. We talk about a small percentage that, of course, the consumers would be aware of, and it would be a small percentage that would not really affect the price. Thank you. So, as I was saying, our example is the public health system. So, public health. Health is a matter that concerns all citizens. It is, in fact, something that they all contribute to, because the public health is maintained as public and free for everyone, because there are contributions paid through taxes and funds as well. Which is why we believe that it is essential for not only the companies to play a part, but also for the consumers. Because, as the example demonstrates, there are multiple examples of cases where both the people who benefit and the people who that both the people who make use of the benefit and gain from the benefit, both cases, by working together, they bring to an efficient and working model. In fact, efficiency is something that we also believe in. We believe that with the money coming from both customers and companies, we would have the most efficient scenario. So, to reestablish what we believe in: responsibility and efficiency. Responsibility, why? Because we want citizens aware of all the dangers that concern them directly. Pollution, climate change, they are matters that concern you.
So why should the consumers pay to fix a problem that the companies created and then the companies actually have found to pay for themselves?
Thank you for your question. Because it is not only companies who pollute, as we have already stated, it is a common problem. And even if it is still a problem that concerns citizens, at this point we are far too late for us to be able to point fingers around. It is a matter that concerns everyone, and we should just work together to be able to solve the problem. Because we can't talk about companies and individuals at this point. We are all citizens of the earth, and we all need to bear responsibility. And in fact, responsibility is one of our principles. Responsibility is the second term we use to define our principle, because we strongly believe in responsibility and effectiveness. Because we believe that our model is the most effective solution, because it would bring funds from both the companies and the consumers. It is the best way to go on about solving this common issue that involves not only the companies, because we all live on the same planet. It is a matter that involves everyone, and we must all come together to be able to solve this common problem, which is why we believe that responsibility is something that we must work on, and that having the consumers share a part of the cost would make them far more responsible, and it is necessary for them to be responsible. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you for your speech. That speech lasted 7 minutes and 30 seconds. I would now like to give the floor to the third speaker for side probation.
Okay, the judges. First of all, I would like to structure my speech. In fact, I'm going to structure my speech in spheres of discussion that will be two. So, justice of the action and a relationship between companies and individuals. So, before explaining these spheres of discussion, I would like to refuse, firstly, the fact that the second speaker has brought a model in the second speech. The second speaker can do that because we had just one speech to refute the model, while we could have had different discussion with the other team. And at the same time, we would have to rebuild our arguments, and doing so, we would have to refute and rebuild this debate. So they can bring an argument in the second speech, because we left only with one speech. So then, about spheres of discussion, the first is justice of the action. And so I would like to say that the companies will avoid paying the waste transporting and getting rid of them. So even if the company is paying this cost, they would not lose money because the adoption of these technologies is made to benefit the consumers. So the first speaker of the other team has in fact supposed, on the other hand, answering to a POI, the idea that the companies are responsible for their action. And this is what we are supporting and for what we are fighting with. So companies should fund this process in order to gain the circular economy. So then companies are selling more to the consumer because of less waste and green shift. So they are gaining more real profits. Money are one of the most important powerful objects that, conversely to what the first speaker said, are in the hand of these big companies and small companies too. So there is not a contradiction in our model because we have stated how both company and people will take benefit from this. So the first speaker said how economists will take profit from this, about the model, for example, that I have already stated in the fact that we will trade with this ecological shift. And on the other side, the second speaker has said how men, so women and people, will take benefit from this. So then it isn't just to let consumers pay, because companies are the real polluters. Because as the first speaker was telling us, and with an evidence, 7 companies of the world produce the 80% of emissions. And this is unacceptable, because 80% of emissions means 80% of all pollution. So only these 7 companies are responsible for our pollution. And the other smaller companies that we were talking about are related to these big companies. So they are responsible for this pollution.
Yeah.
Yes. Okay.
But are you aware that also citizens can do a small part to fight against climate change?
Okay, I'm going to reveal that later, but just to answer, citizens are not responsible for that. So they don't have to pay, or just to have these companies that have polluted for years and that are damaging their condition to pay, because they are not responsible to that. And as the second speaker has stated, maybe in the future, or certainly, there will be uprising, because they will not feel motivated by the society, but they will feel exploited in the position of citizens. So then I would like to say that the aim of this circular economy is to produce less waste that derives from the company's product, not being responsible and causing pollution. So it wouldn't be logical to burden the consumers when their waste is not caused by choice, but it's simply an answer to the economy of these big companies. So the consumers are buying already a polluting product, and it is not just to let them pay for it, because they are not responsible for that. But the real polluters, as I have already stated, are the biggest companies. So for smaller company too, which is the smaller company is substantial to the fact that the bigger one are just related to that. So to these economies. So the smaller economy are related to the big economy that pollutes. So the small economy pollutes too, and are related to these big businesses, dear judges. So they are responsible for that, and they are going to pay too, because they are funded by the biggest economy. So then I would like to just go to the second sphere of discussion, that is the relationship between companies and individuals. So, as the first and second speaker said, rebuild, reuse, recycle, reduce, and return. These are the 5 most important points of the circulating economy. And I would like to say that consumers will invest in the new goods and technologies that will be provided by the circular economy. The companies that will support a good ecological model will create a better market and a new market. So we are creating a great system of competitiveness that will be based on ecological economy. So we are creating a market too that will be based on the ecological shift. And this is really important for our aim, so to fight, I want to remember, against the climate change. So then I would like to say that the reciprocal trust between companies and customer is fundamental for the fact that people will feel motivated to buy products from a company that sustain these goals. So for this reason, they will support companies that fight against climate change, and people won't feel alienated or, on the other side, responsible for something that they are not responsible about. So I want to answer to the rebuttal of the second speaker that sustained the fact that people want a price, or maybe just want a concern about this, because they won't pay a lot of fee, but they will just pay maybe few euros or something like that. But the uprisings born in a territory, or maybe in a situation in which people feel not responsible for something that the government has imposed. And in this reasoning, the fact that the government is imposing a tax on something that is not related to the concern of the population, but is related to the biggest company polluters, is not something to deal about for the uprisings. So they certainly appear in this situation. So if the citizen will be constricted to pay, there will be uprising and alienation, because they will feel exploited. And we want to avoid this, just letting the biggest company, that are the real polluters, to pay in this situation. So then, why citizen would be responsible for something that has nothing to do with it? They are not taking benefits from this assumption because they are not responsible. So they are the direct, on the other hand, affected by the polluting economies. So they are not responsible, but they are the affected one. So they will never pay a fee for that. And for this reason, I am so proud to propose.
Thank you for your speech. That lasted 8 minutes. I would now like to give the floor to the third speaker for side opposition. Here.
Thank you very much. I will start my speech in 3, 2, 1, and go. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I'm the third speaker of the opposition team. I would like to start my speech by outlining what has been said so far. In particular, I found 2 points in which this debate can be summed. The first one is regarding who this motion affects, who is engaged in this matter. The proposition team has said that companies would be the only ones that will benefit from the transition, because the profit is anyway returning to them. We, on the other hand, have stated multiple times that companies are of course affected by this transition, because they are the ones that will actually change their economic system. But customers are affected by this transition as well, for 2 main reasons. The first one, they are the ones buying the product, of course. And the second reason is that this change in the economic system is mainly made to face the climate change problem, to combat a problem that see us all, just 1 second, as stakeholders, yes.
So, if you say that they are the ones buying goods, then what makes you believe that they would also be willing to pay an additional fee?
Thank you very much. I will answer your question later in my speech. As I was saying, this problem sees us all as stakeholders. Therefore, it affects us all, and its resolution affects us all. The second point is the possibility of customers to pay. Well, the other team has stated multiple times that consumers couldn't sustain the payment anyways, and that only companies could do that. We think that and we demonstrated that customers are more than able to bear part of this cost. We of course don't think that customers should pay the total sum just in one time. Customers should pay through the model that we have presented, through the increase of costs of the final product. This increase would be, of course, manageable. Then I would like in particular to respond to what has been said by the third position speaker. They said that it's unjust to let customers pay because companies are the one responsible for this pollution. But they said, and I quote, they are the real cause of this pollution. But even customers are, yes, just only in part, but we are more than 8 billion people. So a small part for every single individual makes a really big part. So we still as individuals pollute with waste and pollution and CO2 emission, we pollute. So we all, of course, also contribute to this pollution. Even if they were not polluting, okay, let's think that as an assumption. You have said that they should not pay to solve this problem just because they did not create it. But this is a problem regarding all of us. This is a global problem. Global warming is seeing all of us concerned. So we should all have for a problem that is regarding all of us. With that being said, I would like to re-establish our arguments by repeating one more time what I think we have made really clear during this debate. That, of course, is the principle that we want to defend. Sensibilization and responsibility, not only for customers, but for companies too.
If you support responsibility, then shouldn't the companies, the ones responsible for the pollution, be the ones to pay? Could you repeat your reply? If you believe in responsibility, then shouldn't the companies that are the major responsible for pollution be the ones to pay?
We believe in have an informed population and so have informed people that can make on their own informed choices. And to make informed choices, they need to be sensibilized. And we think that this is one of the best ways to do it. Thank you very much. And as I was saying, sensibilization and responsibility is our principle, not only for companies, but for customers too. The necessary cost for the transition to a circular economy must not be fully borne by companies, because in this way, customers, which are the stakeholders of this matter, the people that will be more largely affected by this transition, would be excluded. My colleagues have already explained how by making the consumers pay through the counter model that we have exposed before, we are one step ahead on their sensibilization and responsibilization. Moreover, we have underlined more and more time how, because customers are the ones that would benefit the most from a transition to the circular economy, they should contribute to making this change happen, becoming in this way much more responsible. We have also mentioned how the fact that this transition to a circular economy being paid by both customers and company would be much more efficient. We believe that this is a proof, and to understand why, let's, for example, imagine that what we propose were to be put in action, were to be a reality. Things would move much more quickly. We don't have much time left, so we have to make the best of the years that we actually do have. If both sides were to pay the money necessary to this transition to a circular economy, the time needed to complete this transition would be much more reduced. We would have a healthier environment to live in a quicker way. So I would like to conclude my speech and thank you for your attention, and I hope I have been able to convince you all that since we are all part of the problem, consumers and companies should both pay to be in a healthier environment in a quicker way. Thank you very much.
Thank you for your speech. That speech lasted 7 minutes and 30 seconds. I would now like to leave the floor to the reply speaker for side opposition. Pieve.
Just 1 second, so this will start here. Okay. I will start my reply speech in 3, 2, 1, and go. So, good afternoon, everyone. I'm Maran again, and I will now take care of the reply speech. Starting with the points we have touched upon. Mainly, we talked about who would pollute more. Proposition has stated multiple times that the main and real responsible ones for pollution are companies. Us, on the other hand, have agreed with that. Companies are still a very major cause of pollution in the world, but that still doesn't change the fact that citizens and privates are also responsible for pollution. And this is exactly why we believe that we won, because proposition completely disregarded the contribution that privates make to the pollution in the world. We also talked about the benefits that we talked about who would benefit from the transition to a circular economy. Proposition has claimed that only companies would benefit. Us, on the other hand, said that companies and privates would benefit from it because we are all citizens of the world. A transition would bring effects to that it would bring changes to the matter of climate change, and we all live in the world, so it would affect not only companies but us as well. We also talked about who pays and who is responsible. Proposition claimed multiple times that in our vision, it would be customers who would be punished for something that they are not responsible for. Us, on the other hand, has stated that customers are not punished. Simply, they are asked to make a contribution to a matter that greatly concerns them, which is why we believe that we won this point as well, because companies still pay more than private, because they are the ones that pollute more, as stated in the previous point of clash. With this, I will now go over the two worlds that have emerged in this debate. It is basically a clash on our visions. In the vision that proposition has brought us, it is a world where only companies are responsible for the pollution. It is a world where the companies are the only ones that can afford to pay the transition to circular economy. It is a world where, most importantly, citizens aren't responsible. It is a world where they don't care, or maybe aren't even aware of the great dangers that pollution pose to all of the citizens in the world. On the other hand, we wish and strive for a world that prioritizes the engagement of customers. We want a world where customers are aware and responsible, where citizens are active in the fight against climate change. They are making a collaboration. Because we want a collaboration between consumers and companies. We do not want for one to only bear the brunt of this big issue that concerns everyone. What we want is for for all of us as citizens of the world to make a contribution to solve the great matter that is climate change. So with this, I hope I have been able to convince everyone here that it is necessary for customers to make the small contribution that they can to solve this great issue that impacts everyone. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you for your speech. This reply speech lasted 3 minutes and 42 seconds. I would now like to give the floor to the reply speaker and side proposition. Hear, hear.
So we live in a world where we are trying to achieve an actual solution in order to reach the goal of circular economy, benefiting greener technologies, and overall achieving the goals of environmental safety. Now, as side proposition, we have showed you how we are going to achieve this goal in an effective and time-efficient way. The way that we are going to do this is through a faster change, because we have to keep into consideration that the companies will have the economic availability in order to shift this fund towards the greener technologies. And additionally, it would take too much time to collectively shift the mindset of the population in order to adhere to the type of taxation that the opposition team has suggested. Additionally, we have presented how, although it is true that everyone pollutes in the world, the type of pollution that we are focusing on today in this debate is the pollution caused by the production of goods and the waste in the environment. And this type of pollution is highly related to the companies themselves. Thus, we cannot actually believe that we would have to hold liable consumers who do not even have the choice in the type of market that they are participating in. In fact, the point that the proposition team is trying to bring to light is that consumers are simply answering to what is presented to them. What we want for the consumers is actual justice. And although it is true that individual actions can certainly help the cause of environmental problematics, such as shortening water usage or using less private transportation, this is not the type of topic that we are debating today. The fact is, environmental climate crisis has already reached the point where we cannot waste any other time. And in the opposition world, we have seen a place where consumers would have to pay this taxation, and having stated that it would not even be an exasperating amount, how long would it actually take to reach the amount of money in order to have these greener technologies and in order to actually use them immediately? It would take an amount of time that we simply cannot permit ourselves. Additionally, the consequence is that consumers would feel alienated and responsible for something that, again, they have not caused. This would cause uprisings, political manifestations, and overall dissatisfaction, which is entirely against the proposits of circular economy itself. As we have stated, the circular economy is not something that is going to be created only to benefit companies, as the opposition team has continued to state. But as the third speaker of the opposition team stated as well, we are trying to benefit both consumers and the companies themselves, because it is obvious that we do want a better world for everyone. Thus, we would like to find a cooperation in which these greener technologies and in which primary materials will be wasted less. This is obviously the goal that we so desperately want. So, to sum up the points that the proposition team has presented that prove to you why we are the ones who are actually providing the true solution, we presented you a social-political point of view, which represents how when the circular economy will be reached, the consumer will be able to lead back that profit to the companies themselves, thus not causing a loss in economy, but if anything, benefiting their economy, benefiting the company's public image, causing sensibilization among the population, and additionally, causing the sensibilization of the entire world. In fact, more people will be interested in this matter when the bigger companies are actually the ones to take the action, to take accountability for what it is that they have caused in majority. So in conclusion, I would like to reason on the fact that there is a clear objective of circular economy, which is justice and a better future for all human beings who have a human right to this. And the question that we would like to ask opposition team, is it really just to throw more rocks on the back of a struggling man?
Thank you for your speech. The reply speech lasted 4 minutes and 5 seconds. Round of applause for everyone.